All right. So I'm Will, and this is Chapter 7, Section 2 about glycolysis. This first slide here has most of the important stuff about glycolysis that you'll need to remember. So I would suggest writing this part down in your notes. As you can see, glycolysis means sugar splitting, and it breaks down glucose into two pyruvates. It occurs in the cytoplasm and it requires a little bit of energy investment but produces energy payoff, which gives you a net of 2 ATP and 2 NADH. It occurs whether or not you have oxygen, which is important because it means you can still use the pyruvate for things even if you don't have any oxygen in your system. This diagram here shows you some general stuff that you'll hear about in this whole chapter 7. So it's good to keep this in mind. Basically, you start with your glucose back here and you glycolyze it. Then that releases some ATP and then will lead to both pyruvate oxidation and citric acid cycle stuff. But as you can see, glycolysis occurs outside of the mitochondria in the cytoplasm, while everything else happens inside the mitochondria. And that's the important part of this diagram, is that glycolysis in the cytoplasm. The textbook then gives you a bunch of sort of badly designed and hard to understand diagrams. So I've done a little bit of editing, but bear with me. The diagrams aren't really the most important part. This one right here is just showing what goes into the energy investment and energy payoff phases. So it's a bit of an overview. You invest 2 ATP in the energy investment phase, and then you get 4 ATP, 2 NADH, and 2 pyruvate as your payoffs. So your net gain is 2 ATP and 2 NADH and 2 pyruvate, which I said at the beginning of the chapter. And then basically the textbook shows you some charts that diagram each step of the energy investment and energy payoff phase. They sort of flood you with information and don't make clear what's important or anything, but they do have a lot of fun words, so I'm still going to go through them. This is the energy investment phase here, and that's really what you need to know, is that you're investing energy, you're spending your ATP. So first you spend 1 ATP here to add a phosphate group to your glucose, which then results in glucose 6-phosphate. And then you use your phosphoglucoisomerase to convert that into a fructose with a phosphate group. And then you spend another ATP to add a different phosphate group to that using the enzyme phosphofructokinase. And then finally, you break that apart into your dihydroxyacetone phosphate and glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. Something that's interesting to note is that these both have the exact same chemical formula, they just have different structures, which is why the enzyme isomerase can convert between them really easily. Once again, all you need to know is that you take your glucose and you use 2 ATP in this step, and you end with some dihydroxyacetone phosphate and glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. And now we go to our energy payoff phase. So you take that glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and you use your triose phosphate dehydrogenase enzyme and you get 2 NADH and your next step, which is 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate. During the next step, you then release 2 ATP and then you go through another few steps and you release another ATP. So basically, if you remember, you've spent 2 ATP in the energy investment phase, and you release 2 NADH and 4 ATP in your payoff phase, resulting in a net 2 ATP, 2 NADH, and 2 pyruvate total when you're all done and through.